I think, waiting to feel confident and waiting to feel healthy enough or qualified enough or having an approval, I think that you've got to realize that when life starts, it's not ego. What it is actually ownership.
So let's welcome Loz Antonenko. Welcome,
Thank
Loz.
you. Thanks, Badia. I really appreciate your lovely introduction, and it's an honor and a pleasure to chat to you from the other side of the world today.
Yes, we are really. Thank you to technology that we can speak from Australia and Costa Rica like we are in the same room. And you
Yeah.
all can hear us from the two sides of the world. So, Loz, I always ask the first question that it usually takes us the conversation. That is when you hear the concept allow yourself, what comes to mind?
I think with allow yourself, it's about it's about stopping acting like you need some sort of laminated permission slip from the world to back yourself and to be yourself, and almost like that you're done auditioning for your life and realize that you get to decide that. And no one's coming to knight you with a protein shaker and tell you that you're ready. It's about realizing that you're allowed to change and that you can take up space and you can be proud of yourself for exactly who you are authentically, and that you can even outgrow the old version of yourself.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's really nice that uh how you said that stop auditioning, that you don't need to be, you don't need to be approved. It sounds so easy, but since we're born, we are auditioning. We try to fit in order to survive, and then in adolescence we try to shake it a little bit, but we keep growing and putting layers, and it's, it sounds so easy, right? To come back to
Right.
ourselves and to be authentically. But um, can you tell us a story or or a moment in your life when you had to unlearn to fit in order to belong to yourself, in order to be you authentically?
Rather than share a particular moment in time where I had to unlearn, I think what might be more poignant is sharing a time when I realized that I was home.
Yeah.
Would that be useful? Because
Yeah.
I've had so many moments where you've had to unlearn yourself to become yourself, right? I'm just gonna grab some water. This is water, not vodka. It is an old vodka bottle. There was a moment not that long ago, actually. It would have been September last year. And, I'd been through a really rough year. Last year was not the year that I had expected it to be. I had exited a 7-figure business the year before and, assumed that that would be the beginning of my life pivot into something else. I'd been running a business for 17 years that I'd started from scratch in a very niche industry. And, selling that business was not only allowing myself to go all in the stuff that I do now, but it was a closing of a chapter that was rife with trauma and grief and attachment to an old version of myself. So it wasn't just the sale of a business and a transaction experience. It was actually shedding the skin of the old version of me and really stepping into this new version. So that's how I expected last year to be. Right. So it's
What business was it? What business? About what?
So I had a retail business,
Mm-hmm.
B2C business selling very specific health, medical, and assistive technology. So
Okay.
things like wheelchairs and hospital beds. So in Australia, there's a huge space. There's a big wellness gap in this country. 9 out of 10 deaths in this country are associated with chronic disease, and so we had a lot of government support with government subsidized programs,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a great, thriving business. I mean, I started from nothing, straight
Yeah.
out of university, and exited 17 years later. But it was a business that I started with my father in a part of my life where I was different and things weren't the way that they are now. And so selling that business, it was this safety net. This business had become this safety net that attached me to this old version of myself. So it was like this cutting of this cord when I decided to sell it. So I thought I'd sell the business, I'll get the proceeds of that sale and I'll reinvest that back into this new business, which I'd been running for about 5 years in tandem with the other businesses. This is Mojo Mentor and Loz Life, which is what I do now. Anyway, what ended up happening is instead I within months of that business being sold, my body started giving me signals that something wasn't right. And I always believed that the body keeps the score. And I, went for some investigations and they found 2 brain tumors. So that's 3 in 10 years that I've had. And so that was how I ended up starting 2025. So starting 2025, I'd sold a business, thought everything was going to be great and sweet. I had a thing called a microbiota fecal transplant. I had somebody else's gut put inside my gut, very expensive thing. And I thought, yep, I'm going to start fresh, literally a new person from the gut, physically, mentally, energetically. This is what 2025 is going to look like. Diagnosis of 2 brain tumors, and then also not able to take the proceeds of the sale of that business immediately. I had to wait for taxation reasons about 14 months. So I've started 2025 like that and gone, oh my gosh, I literally have to basically start from nothing financially, energetically. I've got to start fresh. And so last year was really about getting to rebuild that identity in a way. I think I'd already built my identity as a person, and really through grief, trauma, and a whole process of unpacking and unlearning and unknowing, felt very aligned with where my life was going. But from a health point of view, as I said, the body keeps the score. And my body last year was in such a chronic state of just healing from carrying decades of trauma attached to having that business, if this makes sense. And so all of last year, I had to try and fix my health. Managing 2 brain tumors, they're not malignant tumors, they are benign tumors. One is on a gland that regulates my human growth hormone, which means that I can train really hard and not build muscle, and also gives me some weird hormonal things. And the other one is on a gland that regulates the hormone that helps you sleep, which is melatonin. It's on my pineal gland. And so my sleep last year was horrendous. So I had to retrain and come home and really strip back everything that was noise in my life last year. And now I'm a social butterfly. I love being out and about, and I'm always at events. And last year, I think I went to 3 events all year. So it was this coming home to this version of myself where I think that it was like this masking that I think that I'd done, being this extrovert and being social all the time and being recharged socially, and this unlearning of, actually, I can embrace a really yin state of being and be still and find peace in the stillness and the kindness of just living my best life without all of that clutter. And there was a point last year, about 12 months after I'd sold my mobility business, so I still hadn't taken the proceeds financially from that business, but I had this massive unlearning. And it's funny because my body is now healing itself in a different way because it's finally got time to heal. And I'm dressed not dissimilarly to this. You can't see the bottom half, but I've got very bright clashing colors. I wear lots of lycra. I love bright 80s ridiculousness. And my sister had sent me through a video, like an old family video of me on stage at 7 years old. This video was taken at a time in my life when I felt like I was really aligned with who I was as a kid. Nothing mattered. And I was just doing things on impulse and really just being like a very ADHD kid who just loved doing all of the things she loved to do. And not long after this video was taken, we changed schools and I'd been bullied for 10 straight years, right? So just after this video, I started getting bullied. And she sent me this video and I'm dancing on stage with a group of other girls in this dance troupe I was in. And I was wearing lycra, pink, orange, yellow lycra. And I'm sitting in my bed and I'm looking at what I'm wearing. I'm wearing the same thing, right? But there was this relationship that I had with that child, this 7-year-old version of me, living their best life in the moment, just embracing the curiosity and, the wonderment of everything. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I just had this epiphany sitting in my bed watching that video going, I've just come back to that child. And it's funny because I'm 40 and I was 7 in the video. And I'm like, I can't believe the journey that I've had to take in order to get here, and the unpacking and the unlearning and the unknowing, but the remembering, right? It sits there all the time. And this is, we're talking about allowing yourself. When we talk about allow yourself, it's about not asking for permission. And I think at 40 years old, I've experienced so much that a lot of people don't get to experience in that short period of time. I mean, by the time I was 31, I was already a widow. And, I'm so grateful for all of the experiences, even the illness and all of the things between illness and wellness, that big broad spectrum of things. I mean, it's given me my own permission slip to just let go of the stuff that doesn't matter and embrace the things that light me up. And so you'll see in the back of my office, it's all bright neon lights. I wear my weird kooky things. I'm on a treadmill, and this is who I am. I just show up exactly as I am to all situations, and not realizing that I don't need to wear a mask anymore and try and be someone that I'm not, and wear a power suit and talk in a certain way and use certain language and, have expectations on myself to be something that doesn't feel aligned. I mean, it's such an amazing way to see life, right? When you get to see it from that lens.
Is the allowing yourself to go back to your core. Is what I'm listening is to go back to your core. You took all the mask off, and then suddenly you realize that you did this with your child. The child and the adult are the same person. So we go together here. We are not arguing anymore. We're not fighting. It's not like, hey, look at me, because usually the illnesses and all the challenges that we go through life is the child screaming, hey, see me, I'm here. Because after being bullied for 10 years, for sure, she went into the underground and don't see me, and being more shy and being ignored, if we can say that hard word. But then is when we allow her to come back, is when we see that this is who I am, no? But it's the child that came without all those masks and all those limitations and all those beliefs that were adopted from the outside. So it's beautiful to see that. I always say that I have my photo. I was 5 years old. That says this is the one I want to go back to. So the same smile, the same eyes, right? Happy, no explanation of who I am. What I say, if you like it, perfect. If you don't like it, you can take an aspirin. If it's not strong enough, you can take a Valium if you want. But this is what
This is it.
This is it. I am very happy with myself. I enjoy my company. I enjoy my conversations, because that's one of the main things, right? Loz, that what is the story you're telling yourself? What is the conversation you're having with yourself? Who are you giving the power? Are you giving your power to your child, or are you giving the power outside to your dad, to the business, to whoever? Even today here we are, and I asked Loz if she's going to have the conversation walking, and she said, yeah. So I said, unless you don't want, yes, that's you, that's who you are, that it feels comfortable. You can walk, you can talk walking, and you can walk talking, and so both sides, both ways, perfect. It took me, I want to tell you, it took me a long time to train myself to speak sitting down, because I used to speak standing up, but I got tired. Okay, I'm 64 right now, so I used to get tired being on my feet all day long. So it took me time to this transition. So you're like half my age, but good for you.
Well, you're just further along the track than I am, Badger. The same age as my mother.
Oh, okay.
So this is it. But we're all on this path, right? And it's not even a comparison of where I am, because a lot of people do. They compare, right? They compare and pass judgment on where they're at and what their expectations are in their life, or where they think they should be. But you're just comparing someone on the same path who's just further along than you. And one day you'll get there, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, or no. But because we have different paths. I was a very athletic person, but for the last couple of years, after going through difficult times, I focus on developing my healthy mind, emotional health, and this is the year of the body that it's like, but my body, I always pay attention since then what my body is telling me. What part of my body is talking to me? If my feet hurt is what step I don't want to move forward, what step I don't want to give, when I don't want to take. If it's my arms is what I'm, it's hard for me to handle. I listen to what my body is telling me, and I, thanks God, very healthy. I went to the wellness and not to the sickness. Okay, I emphasize, as we said in a couple of days ago in a podcast, to change the sickness to the health, to the wellness. And it's a completely different approach, right? When you see, I'm not sick, I'm in my wellness process, not in my sickness. Getting out of my sickness, I am going through my wellness. So
yeah, and it's a healing, right? And I think as somebody that has accumulated more medical acronyms than anybody I know after my name, I mean, I shouldn't even be alive at this point. It's that welding to the label that we give ourselves, and that's the rewiring and the patterning of our language, because that really has a strong emotional and energetic hold on the person that we are. And if we're just going, why me? Why does this happen to me? It's the quality of your life is dictated by the quality of your questions. And so instead of asking questions that are, leading you down the path of destruction, repatterning those questions to, okay, well, what can I learn from this? What is this telling me? What am I ignoring? Who do I need? What don't I know? What can I acquire? It's having a more expansive and adaptive mindset that allows us to then go, okay, well, if I don't have the resources that I need, well, what can I find? What can I find? Because that's really the key to unlocking not just our health, but a happy, healthy, and vital life, right? And health and wealth come from the same Latin derivative. So we have this fixation on having to create and curate our lives based on the parameters of social media and an augmented reality. And it's even now in this day and age, it's very difficult to discerningly work out what's real and what's not. I mean, people use filters all the time. We've now got AI, we've got deep fakes, we've got the ability to create this synthesized version of reality. And yet people are so out of touch with who they are. Even though we have all of the tools to help people get in touch, we know more about human behavior than we've ever known in the history of humanity. We understand so much about the human brain, and we still have a lot to learn, sure. But people are so inherently stuck because they feel disconnected. And I think reconnecting back to yourself and your soul and your purpose and reconnecting to your body, and instead of focusing on these big elaborate ways to change ourselves, I mean, this is what I talk about in my books and my keynote speeches and all of the things, is that if we just bring ourselves back to the really basic things in our life, especially when it comes to our health, the things that we're already doing in our habits and our daily routine, it's so much easier to get unstuck with clarity, purpose, and confidence. Because, most of the time what people do is when they're feeling like, oh, my life is feeling stagnant, they have these massive transformative moments where they go, oh, I'm just going to go do this big elaborate thing. And they spend a lot of time, money, and resources chasing these complex solutions. They might go and do a big personal development thing for a week, or go on a retreat, or take this crash diet, or read every book that they can possibly find, or download all of these apps. Yet they overlook the foundations and the fundamentals of what their life's actually made up of, which is their habits. And that's their eating and the way that they breathe and the way that they move, hydrate, and sleep. And, just those 5 things alone have a massive impact on your well-being at large. And if we're not looking after those health habits, eating, breathing, sleep, movement, and hydration, I call them handbrake habits because they're like handbrakes, then how on earth can we expect to build the wealth and the level of consciousness that we aspire to make great positive changes in our lives, not just for the people we surround ourselves with, but the community of humanity at large, right? Because everyone just goes, oh, that's unsexy and that's boring and it doesn't look great on social media. Honestly, it's the story of my life.
Yeah, the story of my life. And I call it in my book, chapter 11, is what's the story I'm telling myself, who I am, What's my purpose? Why do I live? Who am I without all that, all those things, right? Who I am as me, without my business, without a husband, without friends. Who am I by myself? Me with me. Who's my little child that is together with me? So that changes completely how we live our lives. It's exactly what you're saying, right? It's what's the story you're telling yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And it does come back to stories, right? But a remembering that life didn't need to be so complicated. I mean, humanity existed for eons without this whole sorts of technology that we have today. They had their own sorts of technologies, and there were a lot of advanced societies very long time ago. But it was that connection to other things. I mean, if you go and look at the deities of Egyptology, you know, like we look at people looked bigger than themselves, right? People were always looking for something that was greater than themselves. Yet at this point in humanity, everyone's so self-centered, yet overlooking the stuff that actually will change their lives. And if more people focus on looking after their own health and empowering themselves and listening to the cues that their body's giving you, and you were saying earlier, almost from like the teachings of Ina Segal, you know, the secret language of the body, you know, different things will give you different outcomes if you look at them in a different way. If you've got a sore throat, what is it that you're not saying? How is it that you're not speaking? And I think if we look at ourselves as energetic beings, sure, there's a lot of physiological stuff, but reconnect ourselves back to what feels right. Your body does give clues to what's going on.
Yeah,
You know?
the issue is that we live, as you said, in a world that is running, and is in a rush all the time, and people don't. They live so complicated in the technology that are so automatic, that they don't stop to think. And when that's the first clue. You have to learn to breathe and to pause in order to listen the whisper of your voice and the whisper of your body and what it's saying. Because if you're all the time giving the power outside, and all the time you're seeing all the clues outside, and you forget that the main ones are the ones that come from your inner side, because you have the power of yourself, of how you want to live your life. If you stop, most of the people keep looking for clues and keys outside, and messages outside their body, but that's giving the power away. That's giving the power outside. So it's what do you think that people should do in order to flip it over, as I call it, and start looking inside instead of looking outside?
I think, you know, waiting to feel confident and waiting to feel healthy enough or qualified enough or having an approval, you know, I think that you've got to realize that when life starts, it's not ego. What it is actually ownership. And it's realizing that, you know, I guess it comes through action, right? Like when we're talking about confidence and flipping it, having that conversation with ourselves and understanding that confidence is built after the action, not before it, right? So I think the biggest thing people are scared of is taking the action, because the biggest fear we have is judgment of ourselves and by other people. And a lot of people are so concerned about, you know, that they need a consensus or they have to have this perfect timing in their life, right? But I guess if you allow yourself, then you stop shrinking and you stop circling back and you start waiting for the green lights that just exist in your head, and you're not asking for permission, you're just getting it done. And I feel like that's the shift that flips it for people, because, you know, it gives people momentum. And you know, when I talk about the Mojo Method, which is what I teach, it's sort of this operating system for life and changing life and really bringing yourself back to where you're getting stuck and keeping people unstuck. But there's also those daily habits that integrate through this method, right? But the first part of this process is what I call momentum, which is identifying, like, where are you stuck? Like, actually, where are you in your life right now? And being honest with yourself about what that looks like. Like, where are you now? Where do you want to be? Life coaching 101. Why aren't you there yet? What's getting in your way? And what are you prepared to change? And I think if more people were really honest about where they were at in the first place, instead of embellishing it because they are so seeking this exogenous support system, as you said, like, we've got to bring stuff back intrinsically. Like, we have the power within ourselves to make the decisions that we know we need to make, right? Yet we constantly seek external validation. And it is part of the human condition, unfortunately. You know, we are communal beings. We need a sense of belonging and place, yet some people position that more highly than listening to their own heart, listening to the truth that their body gives them. And I think we need to spend a little bit more time in the health and the wellness system, learning what wellness actually feels like. And I don't know what it's like where you are in the world, but in the country that I live in, we are just, you go to a doctor in a mainstream medical model, right? Which is what our country sits in. I call it subsidized dependency. We are subsidized to become dependent on a system. Now we think about a system is a closed circuit. Once you get in the system, you're caught in the system unless you decide to break the walls and exit the system, right? But in the system that we have here, in the health system, you go to a doctor in primary care and you tell them what's wrong, and they will just give you a pill or an injection or some sort of quick fix to sort the symptoms out, which are down the river. You know, there is no deep dive. And, you know, because the system's under so much pressure, right? A doctor in general practice doesn't even have time to have a conversation with you about what's actually going on. You know, they might refer you out to an allied health support team, a psychologist, a physiotherapist, a dietitian, or whatever. But ultimately, that person now has a magic pill, quote unquote, that they believe is going to solve their problems. And so all of a sudden, they do not need to take accountability for why potentially their body is giving them those symptoms, right?
Yeah, so it's the symptom, not the source. Yeah.
What was that? Sorry?
They take care of the symptoms, not of the source.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas integrative medicine, as a paradigm, I guess, it's more about diving deeper and going, okay, like what's actually happening in the body? In the mainstream medical system, the body is treated as completely separatist systems, right? So you have a specialist that looks up, you have an endocrinologist, a gastroenterologist. This sounds like my day today because I've got to go see all these people. Gastroenterologist, a podiatrist, you know. So we're looking at the body as these individualistic systems that apparently don't ever talk to each other because, you know, a podiatrist doesn't know anything that a dietitian knows. And so we're not really looking at humans as a whole person. How on earth is a human being stuck in that separatist system where all of their individual systems are siloed and no system talks to each other ever supposed to get better? How are they ever supposed to achieve more if they're constantly product reliant or pharmacologically reliant or reliant on a system that's just supposed to keep them in it? Do you know what I mean? Like, so it's a bit of a conundrum.
Yeah, it's the specialist that there is no anymore any family doctor that sees the whole person as a whole and sees the family as preventive medicine. It doesn't exist in those countries here, no anymore, that you have that prevention instead of curing, okay? Because when you cure this system, as you say, you heal the next one.
Yes.
So you're all the time in the system. It doesn't. You don't get really healed, and you don't feel complete at all because you're not a complete person. You are made of different parts. That's what you're saying. That's what I understand that you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, and the mind is something the mental health doesn't really exist. It's something that is a woo-woo, you know, when you try the emotional part.
Or taboo.
In that system. Yeah, but I think that people are awakening and are changing more to the wellness and not to the sickness again. So it's the prevention, is the exercise, is the seeing the person as a whole, is the power of the mental and the emotional part of the body, in the body, on the body, because it's just one, and how we are all connected with what's happening in our surroundings. If we have toxic people around, how that influencing on us, right? If we have toxic environments. So there is a new approach of the wellness to see a more integrated. It's not the medicine, the Western medicine yet. We're not there yet. It's more the Oriental, let's say, medicine that is there. But there are some countries that they started to work like that in the wellness and to see the people as they integrate. Let's say not as a country, but not as a society, but yes, there is a trend in the homeopathy, acupuncture, wellness, meditation, mindfulness, that it's getting more and more and more attention, because the other one it's very expensive and it doesn't work as well to some people that believe that there is emotional influence in everything that we do. And that's the beauty of the world we live now, that we have the possibility to choose, right? If you want traditional medicine, if you want alternative medicine, I can tell you that I combine both. I use the traditional medicine for diagnosis, but I treat myself with the alternative medicine, with homeopathy, with acupuncture, with meditation, with wellness. No,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it's that multimodal approach. And I think diagnostically, you've hit the nail on the head, right? So diagnostically, but I also think diagnostically, there are limitations within the mainstream medical system. So on a personal note, over the last 20 years, I have invested out of pocket on top of government rebates and private health insurance, which I've paid for the last 20 years. I've invested over $630,000, basically not dying, right? Australian dollars, that's a lot of money. That's over $500,000 I've spent keeping myself well, which is why I walk on a treadmill, because there was a big part of my life, nearly a year, where I was actually physically unable to walk. I had to relearn to walk because of chronic inflammation and disease and autoimmune complications. And, having a patient lifted to get out, I had a wheelie walker. At the time, I was running the business that sold those things. I was very lucky to use those. But it's embracing every moment that I have, going, okay, well, I'm going to be having a chat with somebody on the other side of the world. This is a great opportunity for me to get some steps in, because, we never know what's on the other side of tomorrow. I may as well go do this now and embrace the moment. But it's realizing that diagnostically, we can actually use some integrative medical approaches where we get to dive deeper. And I think using the tools at our disposal, if something is subsidized, it doesn't necessarily mean it's better. And I think that's the catch. People get really locked into the system to go, oh, this is the only way. And so they're not even having that conversation. They're not even engaging with that conversation about, oh, what could my life look like outside of this system? Because they're so entrapped, it's so embedded in their psyche of this is the only model. But you're right. I believe that there is an emerging trend and an undercurrent of people going, actually, there's more to it than this. There's got to be some alternative things. And there's a lot to say for, a lot more of the old traditional types of healing and practices. Like I know, like in Costa Rica, things like ayahuasca and other types of healing modalities where, people are now looking at, psychotherapy. They're looking at, other types of ways and levels of consciousness that they can dive into that can unpack some things for them. Lots of psychoactive ingredients, but not just that, but as you said, meditation, breathing, giving yourself space, moving your body in ways that maybe it hasn't moved before, trying things like yoga and Pilates, and, realizing that as you age and as your body biologically starts to change, we then need to change our approach to our wellness to manage that, because what worked in your 20s isn't necessarily going to stack up now in your 50s and 60s and beyond. And I always say to people, how do you want to be? What kind of things do you want to do after 50 years old? Like what kind of things do you want to do in your 80s, your 90s, your 100s, if you can get to there? Do you want to be able to physically be able to do things? Because if you're going to want to do things like go on hike the El Camino, do you know what I mean? Like if you want to go do stuff like that, we have to start preparing our body for that. Back in our 30s and our 40s, we got to start moving our body in ways that allows us to carry that, because all of a sudden you won't be able to do it. And that's what working in that mobility business taught me for nearly 20 years, is that people don't think about the future. They're constantly fixated on the current situation or the very short-term future. And if we actually think decades ahead of ourselves in the quest to actually physically and biologically reach that point, we have to prepare for that stuff now. Your bones are going to get weaker. So like biologically, every year after the age of 30, our bone density decreases. And unfortunately, it's twice as much for a female body as it is for a male. For a man, it's like 1% every year after the age of 30. For a female, it's 2% every year. And then through menopause, about 4 to 6% of their bone density gets lost every year. And this is why osteoporosis affects women, but they haven't prepared for that. And so what worked in their 20s and up to their 30s, if they continue to do that stuff, it's not enough, right? We need to actually do more as we get older and be more proactive so that we can reach an age where our health span matches our lifespan, because that at a mental health level is going to help us feel more empowered and confident and competent and have an ability to do things. Because what distracts people the most as they get older is they go, oh, I can't do that. It's too difficult. It's now harder because they never got the chance to prepare for themselves. And I think really, if we're talking about aging, I think aging as a concept, when we're all aging, right? Aesthetically, it's very easy to not look at age, right? You can invest in fillers and anti-wrinkle treatments at a superficial level, but I think at a biological and a cellular level, that really does impact your mental health as you get older. I mean, the suicide rates in older adults is actually quite high. We've got these two cohorts of young people. My husband, he passed away from suicide 2 days after my 31st birthday. And he was just short of 30 years old, right? He was in a cohort of at-risk men, right? But there's now a cohort of men over 50 who are also making that choice later in life because, they just don't feel the way that they used to feel. And there's a disconnect from themselves, right? We kind of went down a rabbit hole here, but, it's realizing that stuff, it's sitting there waiting for you to take on as chronology ticks over, but we've got to have a level of preparedness. So take the opportunity to walk, take the opportunity to rest, take the opportunity to do something really challenging because you know that through challenge, growth comes on the other side of that. And take the opportunity when you can, because, you don't always know if that opportunity will be there tomorrow.
That's what I call allow yourself to rest, allow yourself to do exercise, allow yourself to have the space to do it, allow yourself, because the limits come from within. The limits don't come from outside. If you want to walk, if you really want to walk, you can walk. You'll find the time to do it. If you really want to rest and allow yourself to rest, you really find the time to do it, and you will
Absolutely.
and you will really find the benefits to do it. Tell me, Loz, what's Mojo Mentor?
What's Mojo Mentor?
Yes.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
So I was struggling to actually find a word that encapsulated what it is that I do. I have 13 qualifications. I have ADHD. I was diagnosed in the late 1990s before it was on trend, and I was a female. I was a female and I was in a minority group, right? Because I wasn't disruptive. But I've embraced my neurodiversity and realized that I just like lots of things. And so what ended up happening for me is I was forced the hand to study and learn because I'm a very curious human being. I like to learn and understand. And so I started in fitness through my own journey. I'm like, I have to unpack like how to be fit and how to move. So I studied personal training, but over a period of about 2 years, I ended up studying about 13 different fields, all within the health and wellness spectrum, right? So things from, being qualified in fitness, qualified as a nutrition coach, things like weight loss, things like meditation, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like emotional freedom technique, which is tapping on different points in the body, studying brain entrainment and understanding about sleep patterns and sleep architecture. All of that happened as a consequence of me being unwell, right? And so when I started coaching in this stuff, because I was qualified to coach in it after doing it myself and then getting the qualification to back that up, I couldn't really explain what it is that I did, right? So I'm like, am I a personal trainer? Am I a nutrition coach? Am I an energetic coach? You're like, what is it? So when clients started coming to me, what I would ask them is like, what is it that your goal is? They go, I need more mojo. Or I say, how are you feeling? And they go, I'm feeling a bit meh. They wouldn't even use actual words because in our English vocabulary, we just sometimes don't have the words to explain what the thing is that we're experiencing. So these words kept coming up in conversations. And I realize a lot of what I do, it's yes, in terms of systemization, there is a big element of coaching. I coach people, we're going from this point to this point. There's a system, there's a process, it's very clear, it's very replicatable, which is why I've been so successful based on my own journey. But a lot of what I do is actually mentorship, Bhatia. And mentorship is different. Mentorship comes from a place of lived experience. And I think that people get that confused. People think coaching and mentoring are the same. They are not, actually. And so a lot of what I do is mentorship, and it's passing that torch to other people. And I've realized through my own human design and the things I've learned about myself, my purpose is to do all the things and experience all the pain and the trauma and blah, 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 and unpack it and teach it and help people, right? That's what I'm here for, right? So that's the theme of my life, which is fine. I totally accept that. And it's great. I embrace it and accept it. But then I was like, okay, well, I've got to be able to replicate this and create a coaching system that I can teach other coaches, because as a person, as a thought leader, I can have amazing impact, right? But if I want to have an incredible level of impact, I've got to be able to have a replicatable system where I can certify coaches to learn my intellectual property and my systems and processes, and they can take that out and also do what I do. So I started calling myself the Mojo Mentor. It came to me one evening. And it's interesting because now I teach people to become Mojo mentors. They get certified in the Mojo Method. And, you know, we have a community called the Mojo Dojo. So everything sort of streamlines in there. I love assonance and alliteration. I'm a bit of a wordsmith. So coming up with words that rhyme a lot of the time are just how my brain works. As I said, neurospicy, neurosparkly, whatever you want to call it. But the Mojo Mentor for me was really about helping people embrace and find more mojo in their life, whatever that looks like for them. It's having the confidence to practice kindness in their lives. It's looking at themselves in the mirror and actually liking and enjoying what they see and feeling aligned with themselves. It's doing hard stuff on purpose because, you know, they know by actively seeking challenge, it allows them to change. It's cultivating collective consciousness so that they're surrounding themselves with other people that they want to be like, who might be further along the path. And so mojo in the minds of an individual is very nuanced and unique, but ultimately mojo comes from looking after yourself. And so I have very distinct pathways that I take people on and very specific milestones that they hit so that we can measure their mojo, not just subjectively to say, oh, you know, I feel like I've gotten more mojo over the last 12 weeks, but objectively with data as well. You know, we notice that their food is more on point. We notice that they're able to lift more or move in different ways. And we actually measure different metrics. And we use things like technology at a higher level of engagement. So things like Aura rings and systems and apps where we're actually getting that objective data as well. So we're talking about high performance, which is, you know, a cohort of people that I work with who are high performers. We're able to then marry objective and subjective data to help them redefine what their mojo looks like. Because once you get more mojo, it's like, oh my God, I feel really unstoppable. What now am I capable of? Because originally your goal was just to feel unstuck, because you feel so stuck and you're like, I just want to feel unstuck. But when people get unstuck, honestly, it opens up this whole can of worms. They're like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I could just feel like this. What else could I possibly do with my life? How else could I feel? And it's bridging that gap between stuff that isn't even in people's consciousness right now, you know, and being just so embedded in a system and ingrained and stuck so inherently that they just don't feel like there's a way out. So very convoluted answer, but mojo is really about finding that fire within and being happy, healthy, and vital for more confidence and performance in your life, so that you can do all those things for a very long time.
Hey, that's beautiful. So if you, the audience, if you want to know where to find Loz, you can find it at lozlive.com, right?
Yeah, lozlife.com.
Lozlife.com, or in social media as Loz Antonenko. And then you can fire the fire within and your mojo, and you can keep going and be directed. So it was such an amazing and interesting conversation, Loz. So just to close, in one sentence or one word, what are you taking from this conversation?
Connection, and I guess an appreciation for the fact that there are other people out there like myself who are doing, you know, big life-changing things for the world. And, you know, we have our own flavor. You have your Costa Rican flavor.
Yeah.
I have my
Yeah.
Aussie flavor.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, we're all in this together.
Yes,
Right?
and we are bringing the awareness. And what I take from this conversation of thank you, Loz, is body keeps the score. Don't forget that your body keeps the score all the time.
100%.
So thank you very much, Loz, and see you soon.
Thanks so much. Ciao for now.
And remember that give yourself permission to rest, to be courage, to begin again, and especially to become what you are meant to be. Thank you, and thank you, Loz, for sharing your wisdom and your heart and opening your heart and letting all of us know those amazing experiences and knowledge that you have gained through your life. And keep walking.
Thank you. I will.